Hello and welcome to another training video. And in this video we're going to take a look at Power BI, the online and the desktop version, and one of the best kept secrets in making visuals within Power BI. So first of all, let's have a look at what we can do, and here's a published Power BI visual. And what we have here is, firstly, it's branded to suit the company colors for the customer. But more importantly, it's not very busy. It's not full of pages to go to, but there is more than one page here. What we have is we have it set up like a website, so I can click on a button here, and this will bring out my menus for navigation. I can go to other pages by clicking on those menu items, and on those pages I might be able to click out a box on how to use this visual and close it down, all with just clicking buttons, and go back to my home page by clicking a button. I also, on the other side of the screen, I have the option to pop open a slicer, and I can now slice by a certain thing or state, and now I'm seeing my data just for California. I've also got a few other things here like waterfall charts as part of my tooltip. So that's quite handy. We're not going to talk about how to make them for now, but they are very useful. If you do have any questions on that, just pop a comment down below and I'll make another video showing you how to create them. What we're going to focus on with this video is how to, first of all, change the color scheme, and secondly, how to create these magical pop open navigation systems and navigate back to this page. So without any further ado, let's get started. Let's have a look at how to do that. And here is a similar report, not exactly the same, just with multiple pages already produced, but this is Power BI out the box visuals, in other words, just how it looks when you produce a visual. It doesn't have any branding or any buttons or bookmarks set up inside it. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be, first of all, applying the branding. So let's go to View, and here we see our themes, and we can click on the drop down and we can apply a theme. Now these are pre-built themes, so let's go ahead and do that one. So I've now applied a theme to all of my pages, but it's not just applied the theme which is the background image, it's also applied a set of color settings throughout everything within the reports. It has also applied some text settings, and if I go down to customize the current theme, we'll be able to have a look at them and also perhaps change them to suit. So what I would advise is going through here, mapping these to match corporate color schemes. You also have advanced for different color schemes for multiple level elements within visuals. These are your positive, negative sentiment colors. Gold for neutral sentiment. A lot of people change these because they recognize that reds and greens don't necessarily show too well for people with colorblind issues. So a lot of the time these are now being made blues and browns, or blue and other colors. Just have a look at, make sure they match whatever your customers' color schemes are. You can also go into the text setting here and set custom text. Don't use custom fonts, use fonts that are generic for within that corporation. Yeah. What I mean by that is these fonts are ones that are available on any browser, and therefore the viewer will be able to have them loaded. If you choose a company specific font, the viewer might not have that font installed on their browser, and in that case they will not display that font. So don't ask me if you can add into these fonts. You can't. The reason these are chosen is because these are the ones that are recognized by all browsers. I've just changed that to Arial. That will across the board change the font to Arial in almost every visual. I could be more specific and say only change it for my titles. The title is the thing at the top of the visual. Cards and KPIs, so your key performance indicators, you can change the settings within them and your tab headers as well. Now with the visuals, the key thing you might want to change is the color, the background color. I'm just going to choose a fairly light blue as the background color, just so that it's off-white. Now what do you have to be careful of here? You need to make sure that that colour is not a colour that you're also using in here, because if it is, this element will disappear against that background colour. So do be very careful of that. Other things, you've got settings for pages and filter panes as well. Once you've been through that and you've applied your customizations, you probably want to save it. So I'm going to give this a name. So I'm going to say save my current theme. I will give it a name, Oaks Blue, and I'm just saving this on my desktop for now. It's saved as a JSON file. You can then move that file around, you can share it, because when you want to get back to it, you can import the theme. So you browse for themes and import it from that file. You can share this with other people, they can import that theme as well. So only one person within the organization needs to set that up, and they can then share that with everybody else in the organization. Okay, so that's the themes and colors. Let's now have a look at putting this interactivity on there. Now, various different ways we can do this. I'm going to say that on my cashiers page, what I want is I want a button that I click on to go back to my home page. This is very easy to do. So I'm going to, on my cashiers page, I'm going to insert just an image. And I've got an image here which is a home button, so I'll put that in and I'll resize it. And what I can then do is position it and put an action on that button. So I can put the action to go to a certain page, and the page can be my home page. I don't like doing this, and the reason I don't like doing it is because it doesn't give me very much control. So what that will do is it will go back to the home page however the home page was left. In other words, anything that I left open, any filters or anything I'd applied to that page there, when I go back on using the back button, that's how it will go to that page. I want to control this in much more detail. So I want to control that page so that when I come to this page, it's going to go with a certain set of filters and so on applied, which I determine. A certain set of shapes, either visible or hidden, which I determine. So instead of doing it where the button goes back to a specific page, I will set it to go back to a bookmark, which can otherwise be referred to as a state. Now that will be the state of the home page, but I can determine all the settings within that bookmark. For example, shapes are visible or not, filters applied or not, and so on. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm not going to make it go to a page. I'm not going to use the page navigation feature. I'm going to go to a bookmark. So we need to set up the bookmark. Easy. I go to home, I say view. I want to view my bookmarks. I'm going to just hide these down for now just so we can work on the bookmarks, and I'm also going to show my selection pane. That lets me see the various different objects. Now at the moment I'm going to add a bookmark, and I'm going to add a bookmark called home. And later on what we'll do is we'll group these together so that all of the page bookmarks are in a folder called pages. All of the pop-out bookmarks might be in a separate folder as well. So we'll see how we do with that. So at the moment that will go to home with whatever settings I've applied on home. Now I can control these settings, so I can say that bookmark, I want it to remember my data setting, display current page and all visuals within there. Now the key one that we might want to change is the data settings, and we'll have a look at that later on. Now here we have the button. We can now change the settings of that button, so the action now goes to the bookmark home, and that will now go to whatever settings I had set on my bookmark for home. Okay, let's take this a stage further. Let's go into our cashiers page, and let's say we wanted a description or information box to pop up to explain to users how to use this page. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a button, and these are just shapes with pre-built icons inside them. They don't actually do anything. So I'm just going to position that at the top there, and if the user needs to click that button, it will then pop open a text box explaining how to use this particular visual, for example. So I've clicked on there. This is a text box. I'm going to say information on use of visual. Need to make that text a lot bigger. So I'll take it up to 24 so people can see it. And I suppose I should really type in information. And I'll resize that and reposition it so that it's tucked underneath the information button. Now, that in itself is a shape. It's a text box. Now, I'm going to give that a different name. So I'm going to call that info box rather than text box, just because it's more specific than just a bland text box. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to create a button that lets the user close that down. So this will be the button that lets them open this. I'll give them another button that lets them close it. So in order to do that, I'm just going to put in a shape. So a simple shape I'll put in. I'm going to put in a circle, and inside the circle what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize it so that it matches the shape above. So if I resize it that way, it matches the shape above. And if I resize it, let me see if I can actually move this shape. I can also resize it so that it matches the shape completely. Just a tip, if you hold down Shift as you're resizing a shape, it keeps it in proportion, so that's also handy if you're trying to make a square or a circle. Now that shape there has various different properties. Now the fill color I'm going to change to red because this is going to be my close button. And I'm also going to turn off the background, and that means it now has not got the white background, the slightly off-white, the blue background, it just has a solid transparent background. Now within the shape I'm going to put some text. I'll turn the text on. I'm just going to do a capital X in there and make it a bit bigger. And that's just simply going to be a close button. If I choose the shape, I'm going to apply the action on that shape, and this would be a go-to bookmark shape as well. Now we don't have the bookmark set up for what we want to go to, so that's what we need to set next. I am going to group both of these together, so I've clicked, right-clicked and group. The way I selected them both was I held down Shift as I selected them. So now they are grouped together. That's my button. I'll be more specific, that's my close button. And it's a good idea to name objects as you're going through. And this group is my info group. Now it's more specifically my cashier info group. So I'll call it cashier info as a group. It's much handier having it as a named group. Now I can turn that group off, and this is now my state for the page cashiers. So that's what I'm going to now do, is I'm going to add a bookmark for my cashiers page. Let me just call it cashiers. Now that is the state of the cashiers page. Now this bookmark here, what I want to do is I want to have the cashier info showing, and this is my info open page. So let's rename it first of all. So cash info. Cash info open, let's say. And I'm going to turn the info on, and then I'm going to say update to this page bookmark to this particular state. Now if I go back to cashiers, it's not showing. If I go into cashier open, it is showing. If I go to home, it's back on the home page. Let's now go to cashiers, and let's make this button go to the bookmark, which is the cashier open bookmark. So cashier info open bookmark. And now if I control click on that button, it will open the information. Let's now apply that button there. Now because it's in a group, I click once, that selects the group. I click again, that selects that object within the group. That's the one that wants the action on it now, and this is going to be an action that goes to just the cashiers page. Let's test that one. So control click goes to cashiers, control click cashiers open. Now let's test something else. So if I go to the home page, if I control click on there, it takes me back to the home page. But now if I just navigate to my cashiers page, it goes there and it shows me the last state of me going to that page. So it doesn't go to the cashiers page with the bookmark closed. So what we actually want to do is we want to create something on here which links to not this page, but the specific state of that page, which is this bookmark setting, in other words with the info closed. Let's have a look at how we do that. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to build a menu which pops open, and the individual items within that menu will go to named bookmark pages rather than page names. So let's first of all create a button which is going to pop open the menu. I'm going to use a rounded corner rectangle here. I'm going to shrink it down to a nice size. I'm going to apply some settings on this. So I'm going to turn on the shadow on the shape, which is the rounded rectangle. Now if you look down below, there's also a shadow down here. That is the bounding box shadow. We don't want that. And we also don't want the bounding box color. We just want the shape itself. So I've put the drop shadow on there. You don't need to do this. I'm going to now add some text inside there. This text is going to say menu. Now you'll notice that the text has gone in horizontal by default. I can apply some rotation. What I'm going to do is pop open the rotation formatting, and I have three options for rotation. I can rotate the whole shape, I can rotate the text only, or I can rotate both. So that just the standard rotation rotates everything within that. I just want the rotation on the text, and I'm going to apply a 270, which lets me read it from the right. I'm now going to go back to the text and adjust the size. Now that I've got it rotated correctly, I can adjust the size of the text to be similar to what I want. Now I've got that set up as I want. I'm going to simply copy and paste it, and then move the duplicate and apply some changes to that duplicate. So I've just resized it, repositioned it. This is how big I want my pop-out menu to be, and I would also apply some other settings to it, like for example maybe changing the background transparency, maybe turning that down just slightly, or increasing the transparency just so that we can just see through it slightly. But I'm not going to do that just yet because I want to copy it and paste it. Also, I'm going to turn off the text within the box there, but I've simply turned off the visibility of the text. The text is still there. See, the text still says the word menu because I want to copy and paste this. And the ones that I paste, I do want the text to be in. So I've simply dragged it down there. Let me undo that. Let me choose that one. Let me resize it. And I want this one to be my first navigation item. So I want that to go to my cashiers page. So I do want the text showing within it. I don't want it saying menu, I want it saying cashiers. Now the text is rotated round at the wrong angle, so I need to turn it back to a 0 rotation. So it's rotation of text, and that's perfect. Now I can duplicate that a couple of times, and I can reposition. Let's make sure we get that nicely lined up with the one above. And I can of course go through these and rename them. So that's going to be month. So I choose the text, change that to month, and so on. This last one down here, I'm going to change the text to be sales by make. you'll notice that sometimes that would force it onto another line, in which case I'd go through and resize each of them. Last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to make it obvious to users that the text at the bottom is how you close this. So I'm going to just simply put some text inside here. I'm going to change that to just a simple X, and I'm going to reposition it so it's at the bottom right hand corner, and I'll make it bigger. And remember, that's the bottom right hand corner with the rotated box, so I could make it there if I wanted it in a different position. Let me change the size of it. Let's put it back up there. That's the icon that people will click on to close it. If I don't like the capital X, I could just make it a lowercase x. And I'm going to change the font color to be red, just so it's obvious to people they can click on it. Now what I'm actually also going to do is I'm going to make the whole of this background box the thing that people click on to close the menu item. So that's the box that's going to have the action which goes back to my home state. So I'm going to give it an action, and it's going to go back to a bookmark which is called home. Now what we have to realize is that we've now changed home, so home currently also has these objects on it. Let's create the action on this button first of all to go to the cashiers page. So let's make the action, let's turn it on. Let's make it be a bookmark, which is the bookmark cashiers, not just go to the cashiers page. And now every time we go to the bookmark for the cashiers page, it will be with the information box closed, because that's how we've set that bookmark to be. Now if I go back to my home bookmark, we see that this has these all showing. So I need to turn them all off and then reset my home bookmark. Now a good tip is to group these together. So I'm holding down Shift as I select them, including the background. I'm going to right click and group these all together. You can do this at any stage. You can still edit the individual items once they're grouped. I'm going to rename this, I'm going to call it menu, and I can now turn that menu off or hide the menu, and I can update my home bookmark. So my home bookmark is now recorded as having the menu closed. I'm going to make the menu open again with a new bookmark. So I'm going to add a new bookmark. This is going to be called menu open. Now I might be more specific, I might call it home menu open if I'm going to have the menu on multiple pages. Let's just do it for now, and let's make the menu visible, and let's now update that one to remember that that is with the menu open. Now we're going to choose the menu button, and we're going to give that the action, and the action here is going to be going to the state which is bookmark menu open. And I'm now going to choose the whole of the background. So I click once, that selects the group. Click again, that just selects the object I clicked on. And all of that background is going to have the action of going to home. Now we must remember that home is now the one with the menu closed. So let's test that. We right click, sorry, not right click, control click. Control click there to open the menu, control click there to close it, control click to open, control click to go to the link. Control click to open the info, control click to close it. The control click, you don't need the control once this is published, you just do clicks. So that would just be a simple click on it, but because we're in edit mode, we need to use the control key as well. Okay, we're nearly there on this one. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to add a pop out on this side, and the pop out is going to be including some visuals or controls. We're going to put a slicer in there. I'm going to copy that one there, paste it, and simply drag it across the other side of the screen. I'm going to change the text. This is going to say state select, and the user will now know they can click there to select a state. I'm going to copy it and paste it again. I'm going to move it just slightly to the side, and open it bigger and take out the text within it, or simply turn off the text within it, because what I want in here is I want a visual to be positioned. The particular visual I want is a slicer, and I can simply drag the slicer into the visual, and the thing I want in the slicer here is the state, because this is the state selection. So I can pop open my fields, go to the stores, go to the state of the store. That now becomes the thing in the visual there. And now again, what I probably want to do is I probably want to group these together. I want to add something in here, so I want to add in some text in there. So I'll go to my formatting. I'm going to add in some text, which is going to be just an X, and I'm going to reposition it so it's in the top right hand corner. I might actually give it a bit of a right margin just to move it in a bit, and a bit of a bottom margin just to move it up a bit. But remember, it doesn't really matter, because actually we're going to make all of the background the thing that people click on to hide this menu. So I'm going to change the size, sorry, the color, change it to red as well. Yeah. Now if I click the whole of the background, that's what's going to have the action, and the action is going to be close down the state select menu. So we're going to create the new bookmark, which is slicer closed. So let's add a bookmark here. Let's call it slicer closed. And then let's select these objects. So I select the visual. Let me just make sure I've cleared any filters I applied within that. Shift click to select the background there. I'm going to group them together first of all. So group, this is going to be called my slicer group. And again, if you've got multiple slicers on multiple pages, it's a good idea to name the slicer with the page that they're on. And that one there, if I turn that off, that's now my slicer closed state, so I update. I will also want to check my home state to make sure that my home state also doesn't have the slicer visual open. Yeah. So I go to my slicer closed, it's closed. How do I then get the slicer to open? Well, I'm going to add another new bookmark here. This is going to be slicer open. And I turn on the slicer. That is my slicer open state, so I update that. Now let's have a look at the buttons that apply to this. So I'm going to choose my state select button. I'm going to give that an action, and the action there is going to be popping open the slicer. I'm going to click on the background here. So that's the background for the whole of this shape. That's going to have an action that goes to slicer closed. Now we have to be slightly careful here. Let me demonstrate why. So if I test this, that's all working fine. But if I open this and apply a slicer, so let's apply the slicer for Florida, we'll see the changes happening in the background. But when I close it, it then undoes the slicer. Now what we want is we want it to keep the slicer settings when it closes down. So how do we do that? Well, we do this on our slicer closed position. We tell it not to remember the data for my slicer closed position. I only want it to remember all of the other settings, like the visuals, the objects which are hidden and visible. I don't want it to remember the data settings. So now when I go into my slicer select, state select, I can choose Florida. You'll see it's applied the changes, but now when I close that down, it now keeps these as showing Florida rather than cleaning it off. So let's have a look at that. Now when I go there, that does clean it off because my slicer open remembers the data settings for this particular view. So again, I can change that if I want to and make sure that doesn't remember the data. Now when I click there, when I open it, it will remember whatever state I had selected. So I close it, it remembers the state. When I open it, it remembers the state. So Florida remains selected. So it's entirely up to you how you might want to do that. Sometimes I have it so that when I open the slicer, it instantly clears the slicer. Sometimes I have it that it remembers the last settings that people used within the slicer. Totally depends on what the customer wants. They'll get used to how you set it. So maybe have a dialogue to explain how to use it in the first instance, and then after that they can just go ahead and use it. Okay, so that really is it in a nutshell. Do make your reports look better. Use some of the settings at your disposal, so definitely apply a theme, definitely change into corporate colors. Do use buttons, but don't overuse them. So use buttons with show hide options. Don't overuse them. Don't overcomplicate each slide. You'll notice down here I have all of my pages turned off, apart from the home page. I don't want users to navigate to pages that they choose. I only want them to navigate to pages that come from another page. I want to lead them through the story. I want to read the story to them, or let them read the story, but I want to make sure they start at the beginning of the book. They don't just open it in the middle and then start reading backwards. So that's the idea of using buttons and using hyperlinks. Hyperlinks, fantastic. Make sure you set them up properly. Make sure that they do or don't contain the data settings depending on what you want. So if I go here, I might say I do want it to remember that when I close the box. Or I might say when I open this, I want it to clear the slicer. Yeah. If I open my menu, I might want to remember that my menu setting must also close down this lot here. So let me go back to the bookmark and set that properly. So if I go into my view, bookmarks, let's turn the selection pane on as well. My menu open position, I want it not to have the slicer setting open. So now I can go back and update my menu open. Let's go through these. So let's go to my home page. That's fine. Let's go to cashier's page. That's fine. Cashier info open. Again, that's fine. Let's go back to my menu open, which is on my home page. That's the menu open. Slicer closed. Slicer open. They're all now working fine. So that's what you need to remember to do. Change everything in corporate colors, like I say. Do use buttons, don't overuse them. If you have got lots of pages, don't just let people willy-nilly navigate through those pages. Do be aware also that people can set their own bookmarks. So now in the published version, there's a section for personal bookmarks that people can set. And they can also set a personal page, which will be where they go to every time they view this report by default. You, as the creator of the report, can't override that. So they can set a personal page to take them to a point within the report that they want to get to. They can also bookmark individual pages once they've got to it, so they don't have to read through the story every time through the path that you've defined. But the first time they go to the report, they will have to read through in the order that you've defined. And if I've only set 3 links there for pages for them to go to, that's the only way they can go to these pages. They cannot go to any of the other pages, because they will not have a link available. I hope you found this useful. If you do have any comments, post them down below. If you want copies of anything I've done, again, just post a comment down below and ask me where you want them sent to, or contact me through LinkedIn. If you have found it useful, don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, as always, thank you for listening.